Every single day, millions of these massive steel boxes are crisscrossing our oceans on cargo ships. But what happens when some of them just get lost? Today we're diving into the surprisingly dangerous world of lost shipping containers.
So, let me start with a kind of weird question. What do you think are the ocean's most dangerous UFOs? And no, I'm not talking about aliens. I'm talking about unidentified floating objects. And believe me, they are a massive, hidden threat out on the high seas.
So just how big of a problem are we talking about here? Well, this big. On average, more than 1,500 shipping containers are lost at sea every single year. Think about that. That's over 4 a day just vanishing into the waves. The real question is, what happens to them next?
See, the second one of these containers goes overboard, its story is really just getting started. It becomes what sailors call one of the ocean's metal ghosts, a silent, drifting hazard, often right in the middle of the world's busiest shipping lanes.
And we're not just talking about 1 or 2 containers slipping off a deck in a storm. These can be absolutely catastrophic events. I mean, look at this. In 2020, the one Opus lost over 1,800 containers in a single storm. The very next year, the Maersk Essen lost 750. These incidents create these huge debris fields, scattering hazards across miles and miles of ocean.
All right, so this brings us to the fundamental question, right? When a giant 40-foot steel box falls into the ocean, does it sink or does it float? And the answer, well, it's not nearly as simple as you'd think.
It really just comes down to some basic physics. A standard 40-foot container is huge. It displaces about 69 cubic meters of water. So for it to actually sink, it would have to weigh more than 70 tons, which is way more than its cargo limit. So if the container is perfectly sealed when it hits the water, it's going to float. But, and this is a very big but, that's a huge if.
And here's why. This is probably the most critical distinction to understand. Shipping containers are weather-tight. They are not watertight. They're built tough, sure, designed to keep rain and ocean spray out while they're on the deck of a ship, but they are absolutely not designed to be submarines. Once they're in the water, the immense pressure forces its way in. The seals eventually fail, and water starts to leak inside.
So if pretty much every container is eventually going to leak, what makes some of them sink like a rock while others keep floating for months or even years? It's not the box itself that matters most. The real deciding factor is the cargo inside that box.
Just think about it this way. A container full of something heavy and dense, like cars, the moment that thing starts to flood, it is heading straight for the seabed. But what if you have a container that's packed with something naturally buoyant, like, say, thousands of little bath toys? Well, even when that container is completely full of water, it's still going to float. The toys themselves basically act like a giant life preserver for the whole steel box.
And you know what's crazy? This isn't just some hypothetical example. It actually happened. Back in 1992, a container holding 28,000 bath toys fell overboard. They became known as the friendly floaties, and they ended up giving oceanographers this incredible, totally unplanned experiment that helped them map ocean currents for decades. Okay, so we know now that some containers, depending on what's inside them, can float for a very long time. And for anyone out there in a smaller vessel, like a yacht or a fishing boat, this is where the story turns into a real nightmare.
Sailors have a name for these things, a pretty chilling name actually. They call them growlers. As the water seeps in, the container gets heavier and sinks lower and lower in the water until it's almost completely submerged, kind of like a man-made steel iceberg. It becomes a true unidentified floating object lurking just beneath the surface.
Just try to picture that for a second. A 40-foot steel box weighing tons, with just its corners maybe an inch or two above the water. A silent, menacing object in the middle of the vast ocean.
And because it sits so low, it presents this tiny profile, which makes it nearly impossible for a ship's radar to pick up. And if the seas are even a little bit choppy, forget about it. You'd be practically on top of it before you could ever spot it with your own eyes.
The result of a collision is just devastating. For a fiberglass yacht that's moving at any kind of speed, an impact like that is catastrophic. Let's be honest, in a collision between a boat and a multi-ton steel box, the boat never ever wins.
So this is clearly a terrifying and an urgent problem, which just begs the question, why haven't we fixed it? Let's take a look at some of the proposed solutions and see why this problem is so incredibly hard to solve.
Okay, so several solutions have been thrown around, but every single one has a major flaw. So why not just design them to sink faster?
Well, that's useless if the cargo itself is buoyant, like those bath toys or insulated refrigerated containers. What about painting them a bright, visible color? Well, that doesn't help you once it's mostly underwater, and it's a non-starter for refrigerated containers which have to be white to reflect heat. And a GPS tracker? Well, the battery would have to survive the massive impact of hitting the water and then last for months to be of any real use.
So, because finding and dealing with these growlers out in the open ocean is so incredibly difficult, the shipping industry strategy has really focused on one thing: prevention, not cure. The whole game is to stop the containers from ever falling off in the first place, using things like better stacking technology and smarter weather routing to just avoid the worst storms.
But let's face it, accidents will always happen. And that leaves us with one final, lingering question. In a world where we can track a pizza delivery to our front door in real time, is simple prevention really the best we can do? Or isn't it time for some new technology to finally hunt down these metal ghosts before they claim another victim?